That is a scene from the most highly anticipated movie of the summer, Oppenheimer, which takes us inside the mind of Robert Oppenheimer, the father of the atomic bomb. With us now, the film's writer and director, Christopher Nolan, and producer, Emma Thomas. Emma, let's start by talking to each other like Christopher's not here. Because the world goes, oh my God, he's such an amazing director in the van, off the bridge and 12 leveled, and how does he do it? But you've said the key to Oppenheimer and getting this extraordinary cast, the best I've ever seen, was actually the fact he's an incredible writer.
Luckily, we had an amazing cast who very much wanted to work with Chris as a director, but I think that I would imagine as an actor, what you really are deciding based on is that, you know, the words that are on the page. And this script was fantastic. It was slightly miraculous, in my opinion, because I don't know if you've seen the book, but it's a big, weighty tome.
Right.
And he managed to make a really dramatic and exciting script out of that.
Well, and there's a moment that really stands out to me, and it's when the general and Oppenheimer are going back and forth. And it somehow manages to encapsulate the relationship and sort of the pushing and the pulling, where the general says, why haven't you won the Nobel Prize? And Oppenheimer says, why aren't you a general? Well, maybe I will be. And he goes, but there's this back and forth. But I'm just sitting there thinking, okay, so he's got this extraordinarily complex relationship, which he's able to write to and explain to the audience very quickly in a way that pulls in the audience who these two people are individually and together.
When General Groves selected Oppenheimer to run the laboratory at Los Alamos, nobody thought he was right. He was making the most unlikely choice. But there was something about that first meeting, you know, as I read about it in American Prometheus, the book I'm adapting, you know, Kai Bird and Martin Schulman's incredible book about the life of Oppenheimer. Oppenheimer saw an opportunity there, connected with Groves, but saw an opportunity, and he was a very ambitious man, and he made his pitch. He made his pitch on how he would run it and what he would do and how he would bring together all the different intellects and personalities that they needed to bring together and make this a practical proposition.
And when we talked together with Killian, he said something about Oppenheimer that I had not really picked up in the movie or even in the book. He was a great synthesizer. Yeah. May not have been the best in the lab, may not have been the best mathematician, but the world belongs to the synthesizers, and he was one of them, right?
He was absolutely one of them. I mean, in a lot of ways, you know, that question Groves asked me, says, why don't you have a Nobel Prize? Because by then, most of his contemporaries did, or a lot of his contemporaries. He wasn't the absolute expert in any one thing, but what he could do, and my friend Kip Thorne, who was on the project as an advisor, he's a Nobel Prize-winning physicist. We made Interstellar together and Tenet. He was able to attend seminars that Oppenheimer ran at the Institute for Advanced Study, you know, early in Kip's career. So he was able to talk to myself and Killian about, okay, how would he run these discussions? And apparently he had a near miraculous gift for listening to an incredibly complex argument, thesis put forward by a speaker, and then summarizing it very quickly for the others and moving on to get input from somebody else. And that's a skill that in the years of the Manhattan Project, when they were in this desperate race against the Nazis to harness the power of the atom, that was a key thing for making it a practical proposition. Because it's all very well to have all the theory in the world about how you could split the atom, what that might do, what a chain reaction might do.
Right.
But as the film says, theory could take you only so far. They had to actually make a machine of destruction, and that could go on an airplane and go and kill people, you know, and that's a very different thing to sitting there theorizing in a classroom.
No, it's extraordinary. Emma, let's go from Oppenheimer to Tootsie. You remember that scene in Tootsie?
I like it when people come up to me the next day or a week later and they say, I saw your play. What happened?
I remember walking out of the theater after seeing Memento, and I was like, okay, I don't know who this dude is, but my question is, how did he put it together? And I went, you know, when I had a chance, I saw it several times. Christopher comes to you, and he goes, this is what I want to do. Everything's going to go backwards. Hey, I've got this great idea. They're going to have all of these dream states, and we're going to start at the bottom, you know, the fourth or fifth level down, and a van's going. This time, he brought up Los Alamos. I'm just curious, what was the reaction when he said, hey, we're going to rebuild Los Alamos. Can you do that? I mean, come on. He doesn't make anything easy for you, does he?
He doesn't. And I think that pretty much every script of his that I've ever read, I've sort of picked up with a great deal of trepidation. Every script that he brings has challenges. I think that the building of Los Alamos definitely was the biggest challenge on this one. And I don't think I actually quite realised how big of a challenge when I first read it, because I hadn't been to the real Los Alamos. But we had an amazing crew, and they managed to create an entire world out of basically nothing, and we're very grateful to them for it. I think I see my job very much as facilitating the vision that Chris has, in whatever form that is, and that's, you know, whether that be finding the right partner in a sort of financier to, as I say, hiring the right people. And I think that on this film, we felt very strongly that, you know, we needed to have a really great production designer, a really great DP who could translate this incredible script into the visuals that you see on hopefully the largest screen you can possibly get to.
Yeah. You know, speaking of scripts, I heard Matt Damon say that you were such a good writer and this was such a great script that it actually caused problems. That you called up and said, "Can I have your notes?" He goes, "I don't have any."
He had nothing at the time, but then when push came to shove, Matt is himself a great writer. He's an Oscar-winning writer.
Right.
So he has the confidence to say, "I have no notes," because he knows that he understands, you know, screencraft in this very very elevated way. And but when it came time to shoot his last scene, which is, I don't want to give away spoilers, but it's in the security hearings, and it's at a pivotal moment, he added a little crucial line. I don't want to give it away, but it's a key little moment that just finishes and summarizes his relationship with all the scientists of the Manhattan Project, and in particular with Oppenheimer. And that's the great thing about working with the best actors. You know, they're not just actors, they're creative partners. Right. Particularly when you're dealing with historical people, they bring all of this research to bear. And whether it's, you know, Robert Downey Jr. coming in with his take on Louis Strauss, he's a very complicated character.
He could very easily be seen pretty much as a black and white figure, a villain, and yet Robert Downey Jr. very sympathetic to him.
Oh yeah.
When I was talking, which I think that's awesome, that as an actor he gets so much into the part that he actually said, "Listen, this was an important guy who did really good things."
I was thrilled when Robert read the script and then talked to me about it. I was actually thrilled that he connected with Strauss in a very positive way, because that's when you get real complexity. That's when you get an actor who's fully committed to the point of view of the character.
Isn't it extraordinary that, unlike most movies, when the protagonist gets closer and closer to his or her goal, instead of going, "Yay," as I said before, Chuck Yeager broke the sound barrier and yes, that's a man, look at him. Instead here, they get closer and closer to the goal, and especially if you see it in IMAX and you've become so pulled in. I had a sinking feeling in my stomach going, "Oh my God, this was the before time."
Yeah.
And they're getting close to a new harrowing era.
Totally. And I think that, you know, it's a beautiful moment in the film when they achieve their goal, but it's also absolutely terrifying. And I think that that's why, in many ways, this story sort of suits the Chris Nolan of completely, because it's, you know, there's always ambiguity in the stories that Chris tells. I think that when I think back to Dunkirk and the fact that was perceived in the UK as very much a victory, that evacuation, but in actual fact it was a terrible defeat. And I think that this is a similarly ambiguous and nuanced situation in our history that really we should be, I think, much more mindful of.
Yeah. Here's another clip. This is a scene when Danish physicist Niels Bohr is talking with Oppenheimer about what's going to happen after the bomb is detonated.
I knew you could do this without me.
Why did you come?
To talk about after. The power you're about to reveal will forever outlive the Nazis. And the world is not prepared.
You could lift the stone without being ready for the snake that's revealed.
We have to make the politicians understand this isn't a new weapon. It's a new world. I'll be out there doing what I can, but you You are an American Prometheus, the man who gave them the power to destroy themselves, and they'll respect that.
I couldn't help but think about AI. And I kept asking myself, wait a second. Here, when this technology was unleashed, everybody got around very quickly and protected it. Right now with AI, we got these dudes that are microdosing and going to crazy parties every night. And I'm dead serious about this. And they tell us to trust them with AI. And right now the government is, I'm speaking for myself here, it's very frightening, but I think there really is a parallel between what people are going to see on the screen and what they're starting to understand about AI. Talk about that.
When you talk to the leading researchers in AI right now, they refer to this right now as their Oppenheimer moment, which to me is somewhat good news. It means they're looking to Oppenheimer's story as a cautionary tale. They're looking, the responsible researchers in the field of AI, they're looking for parallels or guidance in terms of what are the responsibilities of scientists putting a new technology out in the world that might have unintended consequences. And the thing that has most protected us from the proliferation of nuclear weapons is how difficult it is to make them. The intensive industrial resources. The Manhattan Project, making those bombs that were dropped on Japan, involved about 600,000 Americans. When you get into the realm of software, when you get into the realm of, the digital world, there are no such constraints. And so it's absolutely a frightening time. And I take heart that they are looking to Oppenheimer's story to at least have awareness that there is accountability for those who put new technology out into the world.